Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. We're going deep today into some seriously thought-provoking stuff. Specifically,
Okay.
we're tackling Rene Descartes' meditations on first philosophy,
Hmm?
but we're focusing on the fourth meditation.
Yeah.
You might be thinking, philosophy? That sounds a little dense. But trust me, we're here to kind of like extract those golden
Yeah.
nuggets, from Descartes,
Yeah.
and you'll be surprised how relevant they are to like everyday life,
Absolutely.
especially in our world of like information overload. So what we're going to do is break down his arguments about truth and error,
Okay.
and hopefully you can walk away with some tools to kind of navigate all this information that's, thrown at us every day.
Yeah, that's what's so fascinating about Descartes is that he doesn't just you know, throw these abstract ideas
Uh-huh.
at you. He starts with something we can all relate to. I mean, the
Yeah.
fact we all make mistakes, right? And he asks a pretty big question. Um, if God created us and God is perfect, where does error come in?
Yeah, that's a head scratcher for
Yeah.
sure. How can we be flawed if we're made by a perfect being?
Right. And Descartes tackles this by explaining that God gives us this amazing faculty for judgment, this ability to determine, what's true and what's not.
Okay.
It's perfect in its design, but here's the catch. We're human.
Right.
We're finite.
Right.
We don't have infinite knowledge like God does.
So our judgment is perfect, but our knowledge is limited. I see where this is going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or our ability to judge isn't the problem. The problem, Descartes says, is this interesting interplay between our will and our
Okay.
intellect.
Okay.
Think of it this way.
Okay.
Your intellect is like your brain power.
Uh-huh.
It's what helps you grasp concepts and ideas.
Yeah.
But your will, that's your free choice.
Right.
That's what drives you to make decisions.
Hmm.
Even if those decisions sometimes go against what you know is right.
Okay, so like that time I bought those shoes I totally need because they were on sale.
Yes.
My intellect knew I should save money, but my will was all about those cute shoes.
Exactly.
Is that what Descartes is talking about?
You got it. That's a perfect example of your will overreaching your intellect.
Okay.
And according to Descartes, that's where error creeps in.
Okay.
It's not that our judgment is broken. It's that sometimes our desires and emotions lead us to make choices that our intellect knows aren't the best.
So it's not about blaming our flawed judgment. It's about understanding how our will can sometimes lead us astray, especially when we let it overpower, what we know to be true. This is starting to make a lot of sense.
That's the beauty of Descartes. He breaks down these complex philosophical ideas into something we can all relate to.
Yeah.
Now he goes on to dive deeper into the nature of will itself.
Okay.
He compares it to God's will, saying that we have similar freedom of choice,
Uh-huh.
but obviously our will isn't as powerful
Right.
or as vast as God's.
So we have this amazing power of choice.
We do.
This freedom to make decisions. But the trick is learning to use that power wisely, right?
Yes.
Not letting our desires kind of pull us in the wrong direction.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting because Descartes doesn't just leave us hanging with this problem. He actually gives us some strategies for avoiding error,
Okay.
for making sure our will and intellect work together harmoniously.
Okay. This is what I'm talking about. Give us the good stuff, Descartes. Tell us how to avoid those willpower fails.
He does. And his first piece of advice is all about cultivating what he calls clear and distinct perceptions.
Ooh, that sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Essentially, it means focusing your attention on things you understand with absolute certainty.
Okay.
It's about separating those clear, undeniable truths from the hazy, uncertain ideas floating around in your head.
Right.
Think of it like this.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after a quick break.
Actually, there are no breaks in this episode.
Mhm.
We're going to keep diving right in.
Oh, right. Okay, so you're saying think of it like what? Okay, so you're saying think of it like what? Give us an example of a clear and distinct perception.
Well, think about the simple statement, I think, therefore I am.
Yeah.
It seems basic, but the more you think about it, the more undeniable it becomes.
Right.
Even if you doubt everything else,
Uh-huh.
the very act of doubting proves that you exist as a thinking being.
Okay.
It's a truth that's so clear, so fundamental, that it becomes a solid foundation for building up other knowledge.
Wow, yeah. I get that. It's not about having a strong opinion. It's about having this unshakable understanding that's rooted in something undeniable.
Exactly. And this is where Descartes' idea of mental meditation comes in.
Okay.
It's about training your mind to recognize those clear, distinct perceptions,
Right.
to sift through all the noise and find those solid truths that you can build upon.
So mental meditation isn't about emptying your mind or anything like that. It's more about actively engaging with your thoughts, really examining them, and honing your ability to tell truth from falsehood. It's like a mental workout for your judgment.
Precisely. It's
Hmm.
about building that intellectual muscle. And what's really cool is that Descartes isn't just talking about avoiding error.
Uh-huh.
He's talking about actively pursuing truth.
Okay.
He wants you to be an independent maker, someone who doesn't just accept what they're told,
Right.
but someone who seeks out understanding for themselves.
That's so important, especially these days. It's easy to just passively scroll through information, taking things at face value. But Descartes is pushing us to be more active, more critical in how we approach the world.
Absolutely. And this isn't just some abstract philosophy exercise.
Right.
Um, for Descartes, the pursuit of truth has real-world impact.
Okay.
He believes that the more clearly you understand things, the better equipped you are to make good decisions,
Mm-hmm.
to navigate the complexities of life,
Right.
and to make choices that are truly beneficial to you.
So it's not just about accumulating knowledge, it's about using that knowledge to live a better, more fulfilling life.
Exactly. And this brings us to another fascinating aspect of Descartes' thinking.
Okay.
Um, he doesn't see error as something to be ashamed of.
Really?
In
Yeah.
fact, he sees it as an opportunity for growth.
Wait, really? We usually think of mistakes as something negative, something to avoid at all costs. Um, but Descartes sees them as a positive thing.
He does. He understands that we're finite beings, and error is a natural part of the learning process.
Okay.
It's a sign that our will might have gotten a little ahead of our understanding,
Mm-hmm.
but instead of beating ourselves up about it,
Yeah.
we can use those mistakes to learn and grow.
So instead of an oops, it's an aha moment.
Yeah.
We can use our mistakes to figure out where our understanding is lacking, to refine our thinking, and to be more careful in the future. Um, it's like error gives us valuable feedback.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And this is where his idea of suspending judgment
Mhm.
becomes really powerful.
Okay.
It's not about giving up on finding the truth. It's about acknowledging that sometimes you need more information, more time to reflect before you form a solid judgment.
That's so counterintuitive, but it makes sense. We're so used to having an opinion about everything, to taking sides. But what if we practice saying, I need more time to think about this, or I'm not sure yet?
Imagine the difference that could make, not just in our personal lives, but in how we approach disagreements,
Mm.
how we have conversations about complex issues.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating a sense of intellectual humility,
Right.
recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
I love that intellectual humility. It's about being open to learning, to changing our minds, to embracing the unknown.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of Descartes. He gives us this framework for approaching knowledge with curiosity, rigor, and honesty.
Uh-huh.
It's about recognizing our limitations while constantly striving for greater understanding.
This is blowing my mind. We've covered so much ground already, the interplay of will and intellect, clear and distinct perceptions, even reframing how we see our own mistakes. And you know what? I have a feeling Descartes has even more wisdom to share with us.
He does. And next, we're going to get even more practical, exploring how to actually apply his strategies in your everyday life.
I'm ready for it. Let's keep this deep dive going. Okay, so let's get down to like brass tacks here. We've explored some pretty deep concepts with Descartes, but like, how do we actually use these strategies
Right.
in real life? I mean, it's one thing to talk about clear and distinct perceptions,
Yeah.
but how does that apply when I'm, say, trying to decide what to eat for dinner?
You'd be surprised how relevant Descartes can be, even in those everyday moments. Think about it. How do you usually decide what to eat?
Well, sometimes I just kind of go with what sounds good, in the moment.
Yeah.
Other times I might consider what's healthy or what I have ingredients for.
Exactly. Now imagine applying Descartes' first strategy,
Okay.
cultivating those clear and distinct perceptions.
Okay.
Instead of just going with your initial craving. What if you paused and asked yourself, what do I know about these food choices? What's the nutritional value? How will they make me feel afterward?
Yeah.
You're moving beyond just taste and considering the bigger picture.
So it's about being more intentional, more aware of the why behind my choices. Instead of just grabbing the first thing I see, I'm taking the time to really evaluate what's best for me.
Precisely. And this applies to so many decisions, not just food. Let's say you're scrolling through social media
Okay.
and come across a post that makes you angry.
Yeah.
Do you immediately react,
Mm.
sharing it or commenting with your own hot take?
Yeah.
Or do you pause and apply that clear and distinct perception filter?
Yeah.
Um, What do you actually know about the information presented? Um, is it coming from a reliable source?
Mm.
Is it presenting a balanced perspective?
It's like hitting the pause button on those knee-jerk reactions, right?
Yeah.
Taking a moment to really examine the information
Yes,
before I let it influence like my emotions or my opinions.
exactly. And that's where Descartes' second strategy, suspending judgment, comes in. We're constantly bombarded with information, opinions, demands for our attention. It's easy to get swept up in it all and feel pressured to form an opinion on everything.
Right.
But Descartes reminds us that it's okay to say, I don't know enough yet. I need to do more research or hear different viewpoints before I make up my mind.
This is so relevant in our world of instant opinions and 2047 news cycles. It's like we're expected to have a hot take on everything, even if we haven't had time to fully process the information.
And think about how freeing it would be to resist that pressure. Imagine saying, you know what, I haven't formed an opinion on that yet, but I'm open to learning more.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off and allows you to approach things with a genuine curiosity
Yeah.
rather than feeling like you need to have all the answers right away.
This is making me think about how I approach like disagreements with people. Sometimes I get so caught up in defending my position that I don't really listen to the other person's perspective. But what if I applied this idea of suspending judgment? What if instead of immediately trying to prove I'm right, I focused on understanding where the other person is coming from?
That's a powerful shift. And it opens up the possibility for real dialogue, for finding common ground, even in the midst of differing opinions. Um, it's about recognizing that truth isn't always a black and white issue, that there are often multiple perspectives,
Right.
and that we can learn from each other even when we disagree.
This whole conversation has been like a real eye-opener for me. I'm starting to see how these seemingly abstract philosophical ideas from Descartes can actually have a profound impact on my everyday life. It's about being more mindful, more intentional, and more open to like learning and growing.
And remember, it's a journey. No one's perfect at this. Even Descartes acknowledged that we're all prone to error.
Hmm.
The key is to be aware of those tendencies, to catch yourself when your will is getting ahead of your intellect, and to keep striving for that clarity and integrity in your thinking.
So it's not about being perfect. It's about being aware
Yeah,
and making a conscious effort to think more clearly and make better choices.
exactly. And the more you practice these strategies, the more natural they will become.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive into Descartes' world. We've learned about the interplay of will and intellect,
Mm-hmm.
the importance of clear and distinct perceptions, and the power of suspending judgment.
Yeah.
Um, but most importantly, we've seen how these ideas can help us navigate the complexities of our modern world, making more informed decisions and becoming more discerning, thoughtful individuals.
It all comes down to this. Descartes believed that by using our minds effectively, by seeking truth and avoiding error, we can live better, more fulfilling lives.
Right.
And isn't that something worth striving for?
Absolutely. So thank you for
Yeah.
joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've walked away with some valuable insights and a renewed sense of curiosity about the world and your place in it. Until next time, keep those minds sharp and those judgments clear.